Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is a special edition of Talking Business with Chad and Mike. And with the World Series around the corner and the team set, we thought it'd be a good time to talk about what are some of the business lessons that come from baseball. And so we're going to dive into that for, about 20, 25 minutes here. Prior to doing that, Mike, we always kick off with an icebreaker. So,
And by the way, before you ask me this icebreaker, I don't know what you're going to ask me, so I'm just like pretending as if I'm a guest. And so here you go. What's the icebreaker?
okay. If you could have the baseball skills of any player, who would you pick?
Oh wow, uh, that's great. Ooh, yeah. Well, damn Yankees was a great play, right? Where the devil comes and says, we're going to make you. I think it was Shooters Joe. I forget what his last name was, but he became the
Joe
greatest
Jackson.
baseball. Yes, he became the greatest ball player for the season, and of course, they outwitted the devil. So hopefully, I don't have to outwit the devil. So, seeing as how I grew up with Mickey Mantle and Willie Mays, and always the question, who was the better ball player? Well, because I grew up in the Bronx, and because I was a Yankee fan, I always said Mickey Mantle. But I'm going to have to go with Willie Mays.
Okay. And for those of you who don't know, obviously Mike is a big Yankees fan. I'm a Reds fan, so I don't really have a dog in the hunt, though. By family relation and location, I am pulling for the Dodgers in this series due to having family out in the LA area. Uh, as far as for myself, a player that I would pick, it's hard for me not to pick Johnny Bench. He's kind of my baseball hero. I used to play catcher once upon a day. But, my second choice would actually be someone that played a little bit as a Yankee, and that'd be Reggie Jackson.
Ah, really interesting.
Yeah,
Mr. October.
Mr.
Mr. October.
October. Yeah.
So if I had a second choice, hmm, well, I'd have a second choice. Uh, I wouldn't mind being Aaron Judge.
Okay.
Mr. Home Run Man. 58 home runs this season so far.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. And, he's the real deal. But then again, I could be Derek Jeter. I could be Mariano Rivera. Just trot him out.
Well, and
I have always
the truth
baseball.
the truth is they're all better than we are at baseball. It's a low bar.
It's a low bar. And speaking of low bars, here's the interesting thing. You and I were talking. You know, this session is sort of we call punt. We've punted because we had a guest who unfortunately at the last minute couldn't make it. And so we said, okay, are we still going to have a podcast? And said, sure, why not? What's a good topic? And Chad, you suggested, hey, what are the lessons in the World Series time? What are the lessons you can learn about business from baseball?
Mm-hmm.
And so, I was thinking about that, and then I said, ChatGPT could be a friend of mine in this moment. I'm going to ask ChatGPT. So I went out and said, what are the lessons you can learn about business from baseball? And I got back some fascinating and phenomenal answers. So now there are 8 answers, and we can go through them. But the first one is adaptability and adjustments, and that's what we've done. We've adapted and we've adjusted to the fact that our guest that is not available for today. So lesson learned, right? It says here, baseball players must constantly adjust their strategies based on the pitcher they're facing, the score, or game conditions. Well,
Mm-hmm.
guess what? What we did today.
Well, I think also you look at the kind of the bigger context in how baseball is led and managed in the sense that baseball has managers versus a head coach. There was obviously other coaches on the baseball team, but the person that's responsible for the on-field performance of the team anyway is someone that's called a manager. And someone that's it kind of bridges that gap between player management, game strategy, and having to be flexible and adaptable. If you have that pitcher up on the mound who's getting slaughtered, What do you do? Or you have, your best hitter, out on the injured, on the disabled list. What do you do? Or you're playing in different fields. But baseball is one of the few sports where you don't have a standardized playing surface. The home run could be one distance in one stadium and another distance somewhere else.
Yeah, it's true. So that goes to basically adaptability and adjustments as well as leadership and management. Yeah, I'd agree with you on that. Excuse me, I would definitely agree with you on that. But you talked about managers and coaches. I kind of want to pick that apart a little bit.
Mhm.
In football, the manager is basically both the guy who's running all of his coaches as well as the business side, trades, etc. Got a lot of people, but that's a manager. In baseball, the manager really is the on-field guy. There is a general manager, there is a president, there is an executive, etc. So it's slightly different, but nonetheless, the key here is that whether you're the leadership, whether you're the manager, or whether you're the coach, you really got to know how to work with people. And baseball, like every sport, is all about people, right?
Well, and the other thing with baseball too, especially when you compare it to football, is you're around your team for a much longer period. I mean, it was over
100,
115 games. How many games?
162
Yeah.
plus the playoffs if you get there, and that's a lot more than the 14 in the regular season plus possibly 17 or 18 games in total.
Yeah, I think regular season, something like 14 or 16. But yeah, basically it's 20 or under, under 20 games. So it's not like, can you kind of tolerate someone for, 5 months? Maybe. Can you tolerate them like 3 times a week playing a game over 6 months or so? That's a lot bigger challenge.
Pitchers and catchers start in February. Season starts in April, May, June, July, August, September, October, and we're going into November. So that's like,
It's like
9 months.
Yeah, 9-10 months.
So teamwork and collaboration is really an incredible lesson to be learned in baseball, but teamwork and collaboration is also a lesson to be learned in business. Particularly interestingly enough, I think of a sales team, and I've managed sales teams in the past, and it's really interesting. I always felt that the salesperson was as good as the team, and that often enough, I'd have like a star salesperson, and the team made him better. He made the team better, but often enough, when he left, I don't think it was ever as good as he was when he was with the team that he was playing on, which was the team that we played on. And so I think that really you can have a star, Aaron Judge, you can have Otani, but you need a team. And that star really has to be what you say, yes, he's a star, but equal to everyone else.
Or maybe it's complementary. How they complement, because there's definitely the different personality. Like if we go back to look at the most recent, I guess, steroid era. When you had the home runs coming in with Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire,
and Barry Bonds.
What's that?
Barry Bonds.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Because everybody knew what Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa was doing. Everybody knows that they were juicing. It was okay. It was overlooked by the league and everything else. And then, a couple years down the road, Barry Bonds came into, his time, and he didn't get the same accommodation in any way, shape, or form, probably largely because he wasn't that likable compared to Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa, which, comes into another aspect of team dynamics too. Was he a good player? Sure. Was he better than the average bear? Yeah. But, he rubbed people the wrong way compared, to the first two.
Yeah, but it's amazing. Baseball is interesting. It fascinates me. One of the points that I have here on my list is dealing with failure. And I was looking, failure. It's like, I'm looking at batting averages, right? And really what amazes me is like Aaron Judge, who's got 58 home runs, who's probably one of the best ball players of right now, these years, bats 322. That means that he's missing the ball 7 out of 10 times, only hitting about three out of 10 times. And you go to Soto, who basically was actually helped the Yankees win in 5 games against your favorite, the Cleveland Guardians, but
The
we'll
Guardians,
call them the Indians. I mean,
Indians, Guardians,
the
yeah.
guy and he's hitting less than 300. He's 288. In fact, the average typically for most good ball players is about 250, which is 2.5 times out of 10 that they actually hit the ball.
Could you imagine if there was a quarterback that had that kind of a completion rate, throwing the ball in football? He only hit the receiver 25% of the time.
Yeah, he wouldn't be very. No, but that's what's fascinating about baseball. But now taking that lesson for a moment and say dealing with failure. So now, if you're in business, you're in sales, you're in marketing, literally, if in baseball you're failing 7 out of 10 times, what's the lesson for business? I guess the lesson is that you fail. And it's part of learning, and you pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and start all over again.
I think it depends on the magnitude of the fail. If it's something that's incremental and you can learn from it and improve as you're working towards that desired outcome, absolutely, that's where failure, can be very, productive and beneficial. If it's, so like in my world in communication, of the projects that fail, about half of those fail because of some kind of poor communication, and 20% of those failures endanger, the company even existing. And so you kind of look at that in baseball terms of, does the coach hang around or not? I mean, I live in Chicago. There's few cities that have gone longer. I don't think anybody that went longer between championships than the Cubs here. And then did they never have talented players, or was it Theo Epstein and Joe Madden, coming into town that was able to, provide the leadership, with the right players as well? Because, after Madden left and after Epstein left, some of those players, not all of them, but some of them are still here. But that success, it went off a cliff, after that season.
Well, but if we come back to, failing, I mean, the other side of that is continuous improvement. And really, when we think about baseball players working on improving their skills, so the sport itself demands constant practice and refinement. Well, business must continuously innovate, improve their process.
Well, one of the other things you found, which I think is related to this and kind of it redefined baseball, and it's kind of hard to talk about baseball without talking about this, is the data-driven aspect of it. It kind of changed what is failure, what is success. We're talking about, Moneyball. If you haven't seen the movie Moneyball with Brad Pitt, go check it out. Even if you're not a baseball fan, it gives a good context on what happened and how they use statistics, and not the statistics traditionally used by teams and by scouts, to figure out how to pick up the right players. In a nutshell, it came down to score runs, you got to get on base. And so when they were building the Oakland A's that season, they were focusing on players that could get onto base, not necessarily that were hitting home runs, but they were getting onto the base. And so it kind of redefined what's success, what's failure. And also all the financial, implications that went with it. You could get better on base players for a better price, basically, than your expensive home run hitters.
As you're talking, I realize that baseball is such a game of strategy and business, of course. In baseball, that pitcher facing that batter. Now, admittedly, that batter cannot hit a fastball that's coming at 100 miles an hour from 60 feet away unless they've anticipated that fastball is coming in. And they've anticipated it's coming in, and they're swinging for that fastball. Now, they may strike out because it's not a fastball, it's a sinker or it's a curveball, but That's the interesting thing about baseball is that level of anticipation and that game of strategy that that pitcher, that catcher, and that baseball and that hitter are playing simultaneously. And
Well, and there's the
that
element of skill too, though, in the sense that you have those whatever that small percentages of batters whose eyesight is at that elevated level that they can see the ball moving at that speed and what it's
oh,
doing now. Very
that's true.
small
But I
number
want
of people can really do that.
right, but I want to go back to your data-driven point that that catcher, that pitcher, that baseball player, they've gone into the game with stats. They know what that pitcher typically will throw. That pitcher and catcher know what that hitter, his weakness, what he will hit.
Mhm.
And so it's a constant game of that, pitching against the strength or pitching for the weakness. Same thing about business. It's that same thing. It's that level of strategy, that is level of really understanding who your target is, what their needs are. I mean, it's just it's funny when you first mentioned this as a topic. I was thinking to myself, but now it's just running around my mind. I think I'm going to bring my baseball mitt to the next meeting I go to.
Well, like you said, there's so many parallels, between the two, and I think one of the ones that people struggle with the most, because like people that are in business, whether you're at the corporate level, the Fortune 100 level, or you're an entrepreneur, sole practitioner, whatever it might be, a lot of people view those of us in those roles as it's just the way it goes. Everybody's sleeping on $100 pillowcases filled with $100 bills, and everybody does these things very well, versus that long game. And how, like you said, you study some of the specifics. How do people react? What works in different directions? And if we look at like football or basketball, how that is really more accommodating of the ADHD age. You have that constant movement. Well, you have football, you have repetitive movement. Basketball, you have the constant movement. Versus baseball, it's not governed by a clock. It's governed by milestones. It's governed by innings.
Well, actually, there is a clock now in baseball.
Well, on the pitching, and
Right.
right, but not as
Well,
far as the period.
no, I mean, you want to go to a baseball game, you can figure it's got to be a good 2.5, 3 hour game without blinking. And then,
Yeah.
and there's, yeah, I mean, it just is. I mean, um, it's interesting. They've tried to speed up the game to make it more modern because we are, as you said, there's so much more of us having ADHD and all of that type of stuff and less patience. But on the other hand, I think that patience, that long-term focus and patience that you can get out of baseball is a critical facet for business.
Well, I think it's that, and just like humanity in general. Somewhere I can't remember where the quote came from. It might have been Earl Nightingale. Was where a person should be able to sit with their thoughts for like 2 hours without being distracted or panicking or whatever else. And I think that's a very rare feat for people to do nowadays. Not to refer to their phone, to do something that fills up the space. And I think that's actually one of the things we can learn from baseball, and also from AI, as well. To be honest, is if AI can do some of those more rote, routines and procedures, maybe that's the advantage of AI, is that it gives people, a chance. Like I pulled out 2 of my books here. Like one, I haven't read these yet: Slow Productivity, and The Lost Art of Accomplishment Without Burnout, and then Papyrus, about the history of paper. And maybe the lesson from baseball and the benefit from AI is, we can slow down, we can think, we can contemplate what we're doing. Of course, maybe it's just everything keeps getting faster and faster. But
Yeah, I like that. What's the first book that you put up? Let's see that again.
Slow Productivity.
The Lost Art of Accomplishment Without Burnout.
Yeah, it's one of those books I saw like, oh, I got to read that. It's on my to read bookshelf right now. But yes, it's it's like, how do we slow down? It's like baseball. We go to baseball games, and we went to one in Florida. The Braves were playing the Blue Jays. Tie game at the end of 9 innings. Me and my friend, we were like, free baseball. Our wives were like, oh, like more base. They were having a good time talking to each other, but 9 innings was kind of their limit. But
Yeah.
But it's kind of how you celebrate some of those little things.
That's great. So I think we've got about 20 minutes in. I'm just going to do a quick summary of some of what we think baseball can teach valuable lessons that are applicable to business. So teamwork and collaboration, we talked about that. Adaptability and adjustments, we've demonstrated that by talking about baseball instead of having our guest. Long-term focus and patience, we just talked about that, really having the ability to kind of just stop and have the patience to think about what long-term. Dealing with failure, baseball players do that all the time. 250 out of 1,000 baseball percentage, three times out of 10. Data-driven decisions, Moneyball, and the stats, and leading to the strategy that basically, very strategic in terms of what is the pitcher doing, what is the baseball player doing, the hitter, what is the catcher doing? Well, what is the business owner doing? What are people on his team doing? What is the customer like? Strategy based on data. And then consistency and fundamentals. In a sense, you're talking about AI doing the rote, but in business, but consistency and fundamentals, because business is based on consistency and fundamentals. Leadership and management, we talked about managers and coaches, right? Every great athlete is going to have a manager, going to have a coach. And perhaps every great business owner, great CEO has a coach or somebody to deal with. Continuous improvement. 162 games, got a long time to keep working at it and getting better. And that's the story of business, continuous improvement. How does a business stay in business for as many years as it does? It has to keep going, continuous to improve. So
I think part of that too is it's not continuous. Like if you look at you were pointing out the other day, the Yankees have won how many World Series?
27 World Series. But the last one was 2009. That's 15 years. That's 15 years ago.
But how many? I mean, that whole journey's been like peaks and lows. They've had their runs, but there have been the low points as well.
For the last 15 years, they haven't even come close. So, yeah.
Okay.
So anyway,
an icebreaker to part with.
Let's go.
If you could select one stadium that you could shoot into space, that would be our representative of sports, whoever came across it, whatever alien found it.
Oh, that's a great question.
Which stadium would you send?
Well, I know two. Admittedly, I know two. Of course, Yankee Stadium and Citi Field. And I like both. So if you gave me two, those are the two I know. Those are the two I would send.
Okay.
And you?
Probably Wrigley and Fenway.
Okay. Well, I have to tell you, one of the greatest feelings for me is when you get to the stadium and you walk through the sort of the alleyway and you see that field of green in front of you and the infield, that to me is like just an apex moment. Mm-hmm. And you've seen it many times, but every time it's like seeing it for the first time. And I love it. So this was fun. Thank you for suggesting this. I hope everybody out there on LinkedIn Live is enjoying this conversation. It'll be on our YouTube channel. And so they'll be able to go there. So tell everybody, Chad, where's our YouTube channel? Where can they find us?
YouTube channel is Talking Business with Chad and Mike. There'll be a link on LinkedIn where we can go to it and subscribe to videos there as well, in addition to watching them here on LinkedIn. And as we wrap up, one final thing. What's your what do you think how the World Series is going to turn out? Who's going to win and how many?
Well, I think it's going to go 7 games. So let's see. They start in LA, 2 games in LA. They come back to New York 3 games in New York. So I think they'll go 1-1 in LA. Okay. So then they'll probably get to somebody will get to like 3-2. They'll have to play 3 games. So 4-2. They might get to 4-1. And then they go back to LA. I think it's going to go down to 7 games. And I'm waiting to see how Stanton and Soto and Judge do versus Ohtani and basically Ohtani and Betts. Because those are the two, and Freddie Freeman. Those are the 3 best hitters on the team. So I think I've looked at the pitching staff. Pitching is not strong on either team.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's coming down to the home run guys. Ohtani is so dangerous. The guy, they're afraid to pitch to this guy, but he's amazing. And Judge in the postseason has to do a little bit better to be the dominant guy that he is during the rest of the year. I'm going 7 games. Go Yankees! Go Yankees! That's what I say. I think.
I say Dodgers in 6. But let's see.
We don't know.
It's a score fest for sure.
I love it. Hey, Chad, thanks a lot. This is a lot of fun. So long, everybody.
Take care, everybody.